let's say someone is feeling a little more tired than normal. Their energy is a little lower.
Yeah.
And they're wondering if they should go in and do their resistance training today.
Yeah.
Are you saying that their rating of perceived effort, rather than that being a sort of 7 to 9 out of 10, they would aim for something lower than that?
Potentially. So you can take it two ways. So say I am going in to do back squats and I'm doing them with 100 pounds. My strongest week, an 8 out of 10 effort is 100 pounds for 6 reps. But the next week, I don't feel so great. Maybe I am in my luteal phase, or maybe I'm really stressed, work's been really busy, or maybe I didn't sleep so great. I'm going back in the gym to do the same set of 6 back squats at the same 8 out of 10 effort. But this week, I don't feel so great. So maybe I'm putting 85 pounds on that bar because 85 pounds feels like an 8 out of 10 effort. Or if you are super exhausted, super fatigued, feeling wrecked, and you don't feel like you even have it in you to go an 8 out of 10, well, maybe you just go and do a 6 or 7 out of 10 at the gym that day. You pull back a little bit. I'm hesitant to say pulling back for strength training to like maybe a 3 or a 4. You still want it to be effective.
Because you lose that stimulus.
Yeah, you still want to be, at least 30% with hypertrophy, but most people aren't taking enough reps to get to that point, but kind of 60% of that 1 rep max or higher range for most people. But you can just take that back, or you can say, okay, I have 3 sets today, but I'm just going to do 2. I'm just going to do 2 hard sets and then move on to the next thing. So you're cutting volume or intensity in ways that work best for you. And I know that's not super direct for people because they're like, okay, so there's all these different ways that I can adjust my program. And it's one of those things that either a coach can help you with or trial and error. But when we think about what makes exercise fatiguing or unrecoverable, it's usually volume more than necessarily intensity. I think people, they immediately jump to pulling back the weight on the bar, or even the pace that they're going at or how intense they're going. But the volume can be cut other ways too. You can still get that stimulus of that intensity that you're looking for, but you can pull back how much you're doing and that decreases that volume. So if somebody is having, their luteal phase feels terrible for them, or their late luteal phase or menstrual phase, they feel under-recovered, they feel super fatigued, their pain perception's higher, they still want to get in the gym, you can either pull back that RPE a little bit, or they can say, I have 3 sets and I'm going to do 2 hard sets and be done for the day. Those are kind of the 2 options of which I suggest to people.
And the RPE, just to clarify, if someone hasn't heard that abbreviation before, is just rating of perceived exertion. And that's just a scale of your effort out of 10.
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10. And so it works for both cardio and strength training. So for strength training on a scale of 1 to 10, like I said, most of the time it's maybe 6, but usually 7, 8, maybe if you're working really hard on, more close to failure, that 9 to 10 level effort. And usually that corresponds to something called RIR, or reps in reserve. And so another way that you can teach this to people who have a hard time with like, well, what the heck does an 8 out of 10 feel like? 10 means I could do 0 reps, 9 means I could do 1 more rep, 8 means I could do 2 more reps. And so what I usually tell people, especially women, because they tend to underload themselves in the gym, is take a set to failure to know what that feels like. And then you'll kind of learn with time, oh, I could do maybe 1 or 2 more reps, but I'm going to stop here because you don't have to go all the way to that. And that's sometimes an inverse way of thinking it. That's easier for people. And then on the contrary, for the cardio side, you have this 1 to 10 scale. But with cardio training, you kind of go across the breadth and the depth of that scale when you're doing cardio training. So you might do slower and easier stuff that's like a 3 to 4 effort, moderate stuff that's like a 5 to 6 effort, and then the higher intensity stuff that's a 7 to 10 effort. So they're not exactly used the same way depending on the type of training that you're doing. But I think with Gen Pop people, it's sometimes easy to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard did that feel? And that I think so many people are familiarized with 10-point scales and Likert scales that if you know what fatigue feels like or you know what max effort feels like, that gives you an anchor for that. But it's sometimes easy to say, oh man, this week, that feels like a 7. I can't do any more than that. I'm just completely wiped out. And just keeping the weight there or the pace there and the intensity there and knowing that your body's still getting that stress and stimulus, so to speak, because you're giving that day's version of 100%.
Right. So you can back the volume off by reducing the number of sets, reps, or the load, or a combination of those. At what point is it just better to take the day off? Yeah,
I think that, if you are, especially if we're thinking in the light of the menstrual cycle or in life in general, if you wake up and you've had a crummy night's sleep, we're talking maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 hours of sleep. I don't like to be the coach or person who's like, 1 bad sleep and you should never work out. But those nights when you wake up and you kind of feel like battery acid, like you're just like, I feel horrific. I had a terrible night's sleep. or you've been underfed, you haven't been eating consistent meals, you're not eating enough, you don't have enough food in your body, you're dehydrated or you're not adequately hydrated. Those are usually my key things that if I'm feeling tired, quote unquote, but I'm well rested, I'm fed, I'm hydrated. If I'm like, oh, I'm tired, I'm not in the mood to do this, then I'm like, okay, well, go to the gym because your body's in a state where you're going to recover and you're going to be supported. But if you're underfed, underslept, overstressed, and you're having potentially poor recovery, your PMS symptoms are super high, maybe it's, hey, you know what? I'm going to just take a rest day today, or I'm going to move that more intense workout to later in the week, and I'm going to do something easier today, and learning how to balance and move that around. So a good example for myself is I try to take my rest days on Thursdays, but last Wednesday, I woke up and I felt like I couldn't put enough calories in my body. I couldn't drink enough water. I was exhausted. I felt horrific. And I was like, my training session is just not going to be good today. It's just not going to be good. And I know my body wants rest. And I think that's the thing that a lot of women were told to ignore that. Keep going, go to that HIIT class, go to that boot camp class. You need to burn fat today. You need to keep pushing. But you have that permission to say, you know what? I feel absolutely wrecked today. And it's okay to do that because we're the accumulation of all of our training. Not one individual session here or there is going to make or break all of these things. And I think that learning, that's where auto-regulation comes into at a broader scale. You can learn what makes your body feel good and ready and primed to go in the gym and what makes it where you feel horrific when you leave the gym.
Right. So that day of recovery, prioritizing recovery might then allow you to get a better stimulus in your following training sessions in the week to come versus not taking that day off and just having a suboptimal stimulus day after day.
Yeah, and I think that if you're someone who's super busy and you're on this tight schedule and that's the only thing that you can do, and you're like, well, I have to do something today, you have to have the conversation of yourself. It's like, is this, and this happens when people are sick or injured or all of these things. Will this move me forward or is it going to dig me back? I like to ask clients that a lot. Is like, is this session, is pushing myself right now, is it going to just dig me in a deeper hole or is it just going to maintain me or move me forward kind of thing? And I think if you're in a state or condition where you're like, okay, this is going to dig me in a bigger hole, or like maybe it is you just skip that day, even if you can't make it up the next day. Like you don't have that freedom and flexibility to move your schedule around as you want. Maybe you're like, this is going to dig me too deep in that recovery hole of whatever that looks like for you. And maybe this week, this just isn't an option for me. And I usually encourage my more general pop clients, if that's happening week after week after week, let's adjust your training schedule and split so it's more realistic so you can get it in without always having to compromise that. Because then I think a lot of women beat themselves up if they can't get their training in perfectly and they can't meet all of these things or do all this stuff. And I like giving people the permission of like, well, if you can't do 3 days every week, what if we just go to 2 until you feel like you can do 3 again? And you have that permission though, right? And that broad scale of adjusting based off your life and what you can do to make it work for you and what you're doing in like the season you're in. So sometimes it's an acute day to day. I'm fatigued, I haven't slept, I'm underfed, I can't do this today. This is just not happening versus like, okay, this keeps not happening. And where do I need to assess and audit where I need to either take care of myself better or pull back until I can do more again.